There's another whole set of circuits in the brain in which we do not control, but we are actually in dialogue with the deeper force in life, the guiding spirit of life. Our awakened awareness is really our surest footing for a meaningful and really adventurous life. You're talking about a spiritual adventure. Yes, it's a path, but it's a discovery. So we can receive divine guidance. We can know what our best friend is thinking before she says it. No longer could it possibly be seen as counter-scientific to have telepathy or divine inspiration, intuition, or a mystical experience, or any other form of transcendent awareness. We've solved the riddle. Everyone in your audience has it. The question is, how do we choose to cultivate it? That which we image is like a catch in the catcher's mitt. It is a divine message. You are receiving sacred consciousness. Your imagined world is an inspired world.
What is the scientific evidence in the brain that proves spirituality? So nice to meet you. Oh my gosh, what a pioneer you are.
What a pioneer you are. I've been so excited to talk with you. I just love what you've created for women and for our world. Limitless and a sense of infinity, a total sense of infinity. So of course now you're in the space of consciousness and spirituality and the place of infinity.
Amen to that. I mean, I remember when this path started for me, it was probably like in 2015-ish. Really got going a couple of years later. And the thing is like once you get on the train, you never get off. Like even though it's hard at times, right? There's like waking up and learning and growing and healing and gaining a higher perspective instead of being so in everything and triggered and everyone else, it's their fault. And like, man, getting to that point of taking responsibility and being accountable for your own life is like a painful process, but a beautiful process. And there's been nothing really better because it changes your whole life.
So would you say you are on a spiritual path?
Oh, for sure. I'll never get off. I think that, it's funny. I'm really like, I push really hard for everything. There's always some goal, there's a regiment, there's like discipline. And it's the one thing that I'm not really rigid about because there's no end. It's like there's such a flow to it.
I love what you're saying. It is so wise. From the view of science, everything you described in door number one, which is fantastic, to push hard, to achieve, to have strategy, to prepare, that all calls on a set of circuits in our brain, what I might call our achieving awareness, how we get to the top of the mountain, how you become the most extraordinary female race car driver in the history of the world. That's how you do that. And still, when you said starting in about 2015, a path opened, there's another whole set of circuits in the brain in which we do not control and we cannot push, but we are actually in dialogue with the deeper force in life, the guiding spirit of life. That is our awakened awareness. Awakened awareness is more of a receptive discovery. Wow, a synchronicity is telling me here's someone I can talk to that will really open up a whole new way of understanding. Wait a minute. I had a dream, and that dream is telling me to move into this space here now. Our awakened awareness, with which we are all endowed, nobody doesn't have awakened awareness, is really our surest footing for a meaningful and really adventurous life. You're talking about a spiritual adventure. Yes, it's a path, but it's a discovery.
Yeah, it's so true. And you were talking about limitlessness and I'm also of the camp of believing that there's enough of everything for everyone if they so choose.
Oh, I
If
love
they
that.
stand like anything. I'm talking about materialistic things too. Like there's enough for everyone to have everything. I really believe that.
Okay, so I'm looking at the painting behind you, which is an
Oh yeah.
infinite bonfire, as I see it.
Yep.
And from the perspective that you're sharing, your win is my win, and my win is his and her win. That everyone's sort of joy and creativity is kerosene on the fire for the next person. And that is the opposite of the zero sum game, the fixed pie, where her piece of pie is one less for me. It's a whole nother way of understanding the universe, where I would say that we are like rays from the sun. emanations of sacred consciousness. And when we care and give and build, we are going right back into dialogue with the source. We're effectively sacred co-creators. We're not the center, we're not the sun, we're not God, but we are emanations, we are godly, and we can co-create through an aligned devotion. And so behind you, I see a bonfire that's so big that the more people who throw kerosene, the bigger the bonfire. It's a generous way of being, and it's an accurate, valid way of being.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I do. I mean, is that what you would say? What was going through my mind is the awakened experience, is the awakened awareness is that channel. It's that connection to the same. It's sort of like we're all part of the sun, let's say, or we're all part of the same source oneness. Is that's the awakened is connecting to that field?
We're connected to that great oneness, that great unified field. And that field is not just information. That field is love. That is a oneness that is built, life itself constituently, just like it has gravity and magnetism. Life is built out of love. The unit of reality is built out of love. So consciousness is information, but it is not just any old information. It's information in love. My favorite part of what you were sharing about your path is that it is hard at times, right? And in fact, I would say that very often, speaking for myself, the most difficult times have never been 101% of what I can handle. They're 98% of what I can handle. We're never done in by the impasses, right? The impasses are to scale. The impasses, from the view of consciousness, there's no difference between inner and outer, my feeling and who shows up in my life. From the view of consciousness, consciousness is in us, through us, and around us. Consciousness is foundational. So if I have an impasse, if I have a struggle, if I have a depressing situation or even a trauma, I am never outdone. None of us are handed anything that we can't bear. There is always a spiritual response that can hold whatever comes our way. We will never be broken. That is the axiom of a consciousness-based universe.
What is the scientific evidence in the brain that proves spirituality? I think that's fascinating. I love this. I deeply love this for humanity.
For most of the 20th century, the brain was thought of like a factory, complete with walls. We were insular, and thoughts inside the brain factory were viewed as packages. The metaphor was an assembly line, like a motor car or a toaster oven. The problem with that is that thoughts, even if we can track the neurotransmitters, even if we can track the circuits in the brain, the experience of thought, the experience, the phenomenology can never be explained, nor can it be explained how we know things without being told, how we receive divine inspiration, how that's very common. What we call telepathy is very, very, very foundational. We all have telepathy. And there is great science and profound, profound science to show that this now in the 21st century, the brain is actually not a factory. The brain is much more like an antenna. It is a conduit. All of us have a brain that's a conduit to consciousness. So we can receive divine guidance. We can know what our best friend is thinking before she says it. We can feel that seizing anxiety when our child on the other end of the earth is stuck somewhere. There is a deeper reality to which we all have access. Our brain is really an antenna through which we receive and perceive divine consciousness. Big breakthrough. Once we know now in the 21st century that the brain's much more of an antenna than a factory, then no longer does it seem surprising or in some way counter-scientific. No longer could it possibly be seen as counter-scientific to have telepathy or divine inspiration or intuition or a mystical experience or any other form of transcendent awareness. We've solved the riddle.
So when we talk about like that antenna, we talk about connecting to other information, and from a dial standpoint, that analogy has been used, like tune the dial to a new frequency to receive it. Okay. So that would make you think you have to sort of direct it, right? Like you have to direct it. So explain how to increase your antenna's capabilities, because I feel like it's not necessarily just about maybe attuning, and maybe that is, but how do you like understand that dynamic within the mind and the connection to higher information, and also from a directing your life standpoint, sort of the more of the manifest like sort of chat.
Would you be open to doing a practice?
Yeah, of course.
Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to invite you to take 5 breaths and clear out our inner space.
Okay.
And in your inner chamber, I invite you to set before you a table. This is your table. And to your table, you may invite anyone, living or deceased, who truly has your best interest in mind. Anyone living or deceased who truly has your best interest in mind. And with them all sitting there, ask them if they love you. And now you may invite your higher self, the part of you that is so much more than anything that you have done or not done, anything you have or don't have, your true, eternal higher self. And ask you if you love you. And now, finally, you may invite your higher power, however you know, whatever your word, your higher power, and ask if they love you. Ask if they love you. And now, with all of these people sitting here right now, what do they need to share? What do they need to tell you now? What do you need to know? When you're ready, I invite you
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that I'm capable of anything, and that I have to trust myself.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, the first one everybody knew.
Yeah. Oh.
But trust ourselves is very valuable for everyone. Trust ourselves. We are knowers in many forms. Our intuition is valid and strong and surefire. A mystical experience is real. A synchronicity is hard data. Trusting ourselves as our inner wisdom is profoundly important. That is really, that is the porthole to the spiritual path, is knowing that which we perceive and sense is real. Very
Yeah, yeah,
important. Trust ourselves.
yeah. And in correlation with those synchronicities, right? I feel like for me, that's how it opens up, is like when the things line up the way that I could never arrange it otherwise. And things fall into place super easily. To me, that's the universe just green lighting the whole thing. It's just yeses. It's just the right message, as opposed to when you're met with resistance. So even within my own life, there's, if you want to do something, start a business, have a relationship, whatever it might be, like understanding the difference. This is actually kind of how I've retired from racing, was like understanding the difference between quitting and letting go, and noticing when you keep meeting resistance that, look, I'm all about trying harder, but sometimes it's the universe just trying to tell you this isn't your direction. And how we can never know what's best for us because we've never been there, right? Like, so how can we even imagine it, to go like, how dare you, this is the way it's supposed to be? It's like, but maybe it's even better, maybe it could be even better.
Even better. So when you were racing, did you trust your deep intuition? Did you have a sense?
Oh, you have, in fact, that's all you're working on out there. Everything's happening at literally 200 miles an hour. So there's no time for anything else. It's like a A Buddhist monk told me one time it was my moving meditation.
I mean, would you say that that intuition was a porthole to divine guidance?
Yeah, I can't say that I got messages, downloads, or anything like that in that state, but I think that I did superhuman stuff.
Yes. Yes, right.
Yeah.
And that opening, that intuition brought in a deep alignment, would you say?
Yeah, to do more than you ever could imagine you could do. Yeah, of course.
That sounds to me like going with the river.
I think that's an interesting thing because there is a lot of energy behind sort of like effort and trying and pushing. And so like Eckhart Tolle and like you're just supposed to be in the present moment, now in the moment, in his cute little voice with his giggle. And that's great, but also you don't get anything done necessarily if you never think. So, what's the marriage between those two? Is this like an alchemical marriage almost between the masculine and feminine? Because the feminine is more about flowing and the masculine is building. I don't know, that just came to me.
We are built, we are foundationally built that we need both achieving awareness and awakened awareness. So, achieving awareness is preparation and research and practice and tactic and strategy. We've got to have that in hand. And then when the moment comes, there is a surrender because we are prepared.
Yeah.
Receptive guidance, the flow, an awakened perception. And that's true in the instant of profound consequence, racing. You hear it in the military, you hear it in decision making and leaders, and it's true at all levels of scale throughout our lives. When are we going to change careers? Where are we going to live? If you think about the most important decision in your life, well, you shared one just now. Was it only, add up the numbers, weigh out the consequences, make a list?
I thought there was just two kinds and maybe you were evolving towards the awakened awareness, but this makes so much sense that there's the preparation. So for me, let's say in that example I used with retiring, it was, being aware of the signs like, okay, look, if a sponsor comes in, if this team comes to me, and or if there's a relationship we could have, if there's a partnership available. But then I said, I'm not going to force anything. If it happens, it happens. And I'll keep going. But if it doesn't, I'm just going to know it's time.
What is life showing me now? What is the guiding force through life
Yeah.
feeling to me now? May we do one more practice about
Sure. Yeah, I love it.
Beautiful. I invite you again to close your eyes, clear out your inner space, 5 breaths. I invite you to think of a time where you had wanted something so badly that red door was yours. You had planned A plus B plus C, prepared, practiced tactically. That red door, A plus B plus C, is yours. You go for it. You grab the handle, but it's stuck. And you can't believe it's stuck because you've done everything right. You might kick the door. You could be stunned or even angry or depressed, but because it is stuck, you pivot. You have no choice. 50, 60, 120 degrees. And over there is a wide open yellow door. You might have said yellow doors, not heard of them. They don't exist. A sparkling open yellow door. On the other side of the yellow door is not what you had wanted. It is not that job. It is not that school. It is not him or her or them. It is better and better for you and has so much to do with who you are and where you are today. So sitting back now, stuck red door, the thing you'd wanted, him or her or them or that job, that opportunity, stuck. Hairpin turn and wide open yellow door that was beyond your imagination. Was there anyone at that hairpin turn pointing you to the open yellow door? A colleague, a friend, a grandparent telling you a story for the first time? Someone for 2 minutes you met at an event, a coffee shop? A trail angel, a living trail angel pointing you to the wide open yellow door. And finally, sitting way back, stuck red door, hairpin turn, trail angel, and wide open yellow door. How are the most important parts of our lives found? Is it narrowly exclusively control? Of course, we have to plan, but are we less hardcore makers of our path and more discoverers of our journey? Is it possible that you have been in dialogue with the deeper force of life all along?
Wow, that's fun to think. Oh, behind the yellow door is awesome.
Tell me about the yellow door.
The yellow door was basically, I didn't even see the door. It was just a landscape of like the most beautiful terrain, colors. It was not a carnival as in like rides, but it was like the carnival of life. It was like a million adventures all in one landscape.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love
And and
Please.
behind the red door was the guy that said, "Nope, not me." And I'm like, and truly, all there is adventure for me. I live my life on adventure. Like people are like, are you ever home?" I'm like, "Not if I don't have to be."
So, would you say it's a guided, inspired adventure?
Yeah, I love that it's like as if we made a choice. It's not. It's a matter of just like being perceptive enough to what's around us to realize that that was just a closed door. That's it. It's not, and it's not almost like we're not making it happen, we're following it. It's
Yeah,
like, are you going to discover the open door? Is the yellow door there yet? Do you see it? Do you see it?
there is
It's like,
always a yellow door.
yeah.
So, the red door, we have the opportunity to say, wait a minute, not why is this stuck red door happening to me, but why is it happening for me?
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
pivot and
Yeah.
open to
Yeah.
the forthcoming bright yellow door. And it
Yeah.
could be 6 weeks, it could be in 6 years, but I know the universe is guiding. And so,
Yeah.
in its own time, time is an active variable.
Yeah.
It's important that it not be on my clock, it's on the clock of the universe so that
Sure.
it can thrive truly.
Is the guide implying that there is spiritual guides doing that? Or is it more about that there being an actual life plan path that is already there?
So the guide is yet just like us, another ray from the sun of source.
Hmm.
We are in this magnificent symphony where we are helping each other along. So I invite you to, contemplate a time where you just felt compelled to say something to someone.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot for me. I'm super direct.
Beautiful. And when you did, were you moved or
Mm.
surprised by how it landed?
There's levels of this. I'd say there's levels of this. There's what's very blatantly aware to me that I'm so comfortable saying because it seems so obvious. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. And then there are other times where it's perhaps a little heightened, and the information I can't even remember what I said, and I don't even know how I came up with the arrangement of words.
An awakened communication. You're a
Yeah,
contact, like an antenna.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Has it been remarkable or moving how that was received by the person?
I'm an Aries, so I burn the things to the ground. So usually these things that I say are wildly direct, and they're not always like the thing that someone wants to hear.
But do you truly have their best interest in mind?
Yes, always.
And we know when people do. When we shared right now the table practice, hosting council,
Yeah.
those who show up and truly have our best interest in mind, we know in our inner wisdom, our heart, who they
Oh
are.
yeah. Hmm.
And the table can grow. And those who show up at one moment might be different than at another moment, depending on where we are, what messages need to be delivered. Well, the same part of the brain through which we speak and connect in transcendent relationship, like hosting council, is the same part of the brain through which we see divine presence and guidance in one another who show up live action, embodied, physical. So when you are a messenger, when you're a trail angel, you are living out relational spirituality, just as when in our awakened brain we receive transcendent relationships.
How does one practice to become spiritual? If it's there in all of us, how do we become spiritual? How do we activate it?
First and foremost, you are a knower. You are born spiritual. No one can take that away ever. It's your birthright. No one can do anything. They could be a role model you don't particularly want to follow, but no one can touch the hardwired eternal seat of spiritual awareness deep inside of you. It is built in. So the beginning is to honor the authority of your inner knowing. If you have that glowing sense of love in your heart, if you have a deep intuition, if you are struck by a coincidence far too unprobabilistic to have happened by chance, honor the authority of your knowing. I invite you to take that as real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as you do, the go to authorization of direct perception becomes stronger and stronger. Spirituality is innate. As we look through the lens of twin studies, we can see that we're all born naturally spiritual beings, but it is 1/3 innate, 2/3 cultivated, nurtured. So our work to meditate and pray and pay attention and align and be trail angels and listen to trail angels and connect with all life, the glistening sun and the living water and the animals, all of these relationships strengthen our spiritual awareness, and our spiritual practice
Mm-hmm.
strengthens our ability to see relationships in their most sacred foundational reality. This is a practice of living. It's not a practice, an hour in the morning. It's a practice of how we open our being in living, as well as start the day. We all do a practice in the morning to get the ball rolling, but then there's the other 23 hours.
Seems kind of maybe obvious, but what are those things that block it? I mean, let's assume, because first off, some people just don't really buy in. I don't think some people don't buy in. Why is that first off? Like, why would that exist if it's in you? Why would you be denying it?
We have lived in a culture that is effectively radical materialism. And I don't just mean materialistic, but materialism is it's only real if you can touch it, if you can perceive it with the five senses. It has been for the past 50, 60 years an ice age of spiritual life in the public square.
Sure.
And this is unprecedented in human history, to silence the deepest core of who we are, innately built as spiritual beings. Science has come a long way, and we've now taken the lens of science and pointed it at core threads of inborn spiritual life. And if we strengthen these deep capacities, a game-changing impact. We're healthier, we're less addicted, we're more resilient, we're more bonded, we have more grit and all the character strengths and virtues. Life is different because we're fulfilling our natural architecture, who we're really built to be. The greatest source of resilience known to all the clinical or social science is a strong personal spirituality. Why? Because this is how we're built. But the deauthorization, the radical materialism, the message in school and college that spiritual life somehow isn't real, or even more preposterous, is unscientific. Science is just a lens. It can witness anything. There's nothing unscientific about spiritual life. But that message is actually a message of scientism, the vogue with a very, very thin mask of radical materialism. And it has deauthorized our deepest faculty for knowing. That is a travesty, and it has led to the mental health crisis. We have never had as elevated rates of addiction and depression and suicide. And if you look at the numbers, the ascension of the diseases of despair is statistically concomitant with the decline of personal spiritual life and free and open expression of spiritual life. Religious pluralism, Hindu, Muslim, Catholic, Christian, spiritual, but not religious. Express yourself. That's our great American way.
Yeah. God. I mean, loved what you just called it. Diseases of despair. Right? I'm thinking about like I'm fairly introverted, and I don't really get lonely. I might get bored. But the only time I've ever been lonely, which kind of leads you down into those paths, it's a little darker in lonely land versus just boredom. And I was the only time I ever was like that was when I was in a relationship. And that was because that I was furthest from myself. Like I had to silence that inner knowing, that spiritual connected part of me that like kind of probably knew what was going on, but I just had to keep pushing it down. And that's, I mean, to me, that's truly when I get the most down, is if the further I get from myself, the worse off I am. And with this day and age of comparison and
Mm.
materialism at every level, like how do you know who you are, number one, and how do you ever feel good enough in this environment and landscape that we live in?
So taking back the authority of our knowing heart, of our intuition, of the reality of our spiritual perceptions, taking back, okay, why of all days do I get to speak
Yeah,
today? And who is it that we're
yeah,
sharing this conversation with, who is awakening alongside us? And how is it that we're all in one symphony together? These deeper awarenesses that we had as children, right? Everyone's born with this. I think back to childhood, that sparkly sense, that sense of how the world actually works. The child is born awake. And the past 50 years have dampened and disavowed truth. It has made a whole generation sick. Radical materialism, a disavowal of spiritual awareness, a silencing of religious pluralism, a silencing of free expression, has made an entire generation of young adults sick. They are killing themselves. We have an epidemic of suicide because we have silenced the spiritual core through radical materialism. And that has to change. And it can change the second by
yeah.
honoring our spiritual voice, as you are doing right here in the middle of the public square.
Thank you. Well, and then on top of that, you have the advancement of the internet, social media, marketing, and the algorithms will mess with you and take you down wormholes that aren't for you and lead you into bad habits and routines and practices and beliefs. I've talked to Daryl Ank. He channels Bashar. Well, it's the message from that he gets is that basically I'm going to just give there's 5 steps, and step 5 is revert back to 1, which is basically follow what it is that makes you happy.
Mm.
And then I think step 2 is follow it until it doesn't make you happy anymore. I can't remember 3 and 4, but I know 5 is revert back to the top. So would you say that that is a spiritual practice to follow your joys and follow what makes you happy?
I think our emotions are a very helpful index of our alignment with the guiding force in life. So if our emotions, and we know the deep,
Mm.
true, transcendent emotions, for instance, joy is not just, hey, I won the race, or hey, I
Yeah.
got away. Joy is a deep resonance with love, deeper force of life, often for someone else's flourishing or our collective flourishing. So our emotions are never against us. Our emotions are wise and they align us with the deeper
Mhm.
guiding force of life.
Mhm.
I think the larger question is, how are we really built so that we can align with the deeper force of life? And
Mhm.
it turns out science has come a very long way. Science now shows us that we are built to perceive. We have circuits in our brain to perceive the deeper nature of life. We know the deeper nature of life is real. And so every day of our lives, we have the opportunity to be in dialogue with the deeper force of life. This means that we don't need to hold on to an illusion of radical control. Of course, we prepare, of course, we do our work, but in that split second or in the most important decision of our lives, we can be an open system as we're designed
Mm.
to receive the guidance. We are actually built to be in dialogue. That is how we are made.
And you mean with ourself as with others, yes, but you're speaking about this direction, this connection with the self, right?
I would say to the source of all life, to
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
sun, the source of love and consciousness. And
Mm-hmm.
look at you, you're radiant, right? Do we make our radiance or do we receive sacred radiance?
Mm. Well, I mean, I guess if I love to think about it like that because I like to think about things like in a almost like a more scientific way. But if you are the sun, let's say you are that radiance, you are like, you can dim that, you can block that, you can make that as gray as could be. But if you just are who you are, if you're in flow with your life, you're brighter. You're literally becoming more light. You're essentially more real. more yourself.
May I share a beautiful study? Can we do a little
Yeah,
bit?
I would
Okay,
love
yeah.
that.
Study. There was a traditional healer put into an MRI machine, and her or his patient, very sick, was put into a second MRI machine, often at a distance in an entirely different building. As the traditional healer started to do his or her work, a pattern came up time and time again, tracking blood flow in the MRI machine, fMRI. Within an instant, the same pattern was seen across the street in the MRI of the patient. One thing, healing consciousness in two places. Patient mirroring the same MRI image as the healer. Okay. So Larry Dossey, who first popularized the study by Achterhoff, which was conducted at a community hospital. These were truly sick people, right, in Hawaii. Often interpreted these findings as saying that consciousness exists independent of matter. Consciousness is non-local. Right? If we go around, and Dossey was so right and so wise, he really broke the ice on that about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. If we go around step two and start asking traditional healers, hey, did you make that healing consciousness and send it over like a walkie-talkie, send, receive? Every traditional healer with whom I've ever spoken and of whom I've ever heard, whether they're in Siberia or Tulum or anywhere in the world, will say, no, I didn't make that sacred consciousness, that healing presence. It came through me. I was a conduit, a channel. I sent it over. I focused it. But that great source of love and healing spirit comes through us. Well, so too, when you say profoundly transformative words to a friend or a member of your audience. So too, when you sparkle and you're radiant, that is sourced through us. That is how I understand the implications of that, I think, paradigm changing scientific inquiry. It was published, peer reviewed. I published it again when I edited the Oxford University Press Handbook of Psychology and Spirituality. That's fact. Yeah.
Wow, you have over 100 or 200 studies that you've done, right?
We've gotten up to about 200 at this point, right? Peer review science. My whole professional life has been focused on witnessing through the lens of science, MRI studies, genotyping studies, epidemiological studies, you name it, to understand the path of lived human spirituality and how, when we realize our birthright, our lives unfold in a far more inspired and healthy way.
Is there another study that comes to mind that has been some of the most remarkable things that you've seen?
Well, the most remarkable study, which you might find interesting given your journey, I think is this. We looked at people to recover from struggle and despair through an awakening in a 40-year longitudinal study that spanned 3 generations. This was a big data set. And these generous people and generous families let us know the depths of their depression, but they also let us know their spiritual life. They told us about their spiritual life. And what we found is that in people who struggle with depression, but then find a way through with a spiritual response, what God are you asking of me now? And then I realized that there is a buoyance in life. We are loved and held, that the universe has our back. And then I saw, despite the pain in my heart and the loss of my child or my job or my money, I knew that I was never alone, that there was a source of life. Whatever one's breakthrough, however they might language that, we saw the same neurocorrelates run in their brain. And the neurocorrelates, which we published in Oxford University Press Cerebral Cortex, top peer-reviewed journal, are that we are indeed able to perceive that we are loved and held by the force in life. It is the bonding network, the same bonding network that lets us know we're loved and held as children in our parents' arms. We are built to perceive we're guided, loved, held, and guided. There's an attentional network that shifts from the I've got to have it, how am I going to plan it, bowling alley view, to the big wide lens through which we see guidance, a shift from top down at dorsal to bottom up ventral attention. And the third set of neural correlates is that the parietal region puts in and out hard boundaries. So we know that we each have our magnificently diverse bio bodysuit and our own GPS coordinate, but we are part of a oneness, a point and a wave, the unity of life. Love,
Yeah.
held, guided, and never alone. Every brain is built to see it. That is our awakened brain. And
Mm.
you have it, and everyone in your audience has it. The question is, how do we choose to cultivate it? Is it through a practice of reflection and authorizing our inner knowing? Is it through prayer and listening to the response from our higher power? Is it meditation in nature and realizing the unity of life and that what we see in fellow living beings and trees and animals is true of us? How do you get there? That's your path, but we're getting to the same place.
I know that there's a lot of the research shows the effect of having a spiritual practice and living a spiritual life on depression, addiction, all kinds of things. If the path is to learn to start listening to listening to that quiet voice, listening to yourself, being attuned, like what is your advice for someone who has such a negative inner dialogue that they can't even choose a good thought?
I invite your divine curiosity, because curiosity is, something that can take us well beyond where we are today. Very gently, there's no rush, there's no pressure, it's no one's journey but your own, right? I invite your curiosity into the remarkable people who show up in your life. I invite your curiosity into your hunch and the intuition and the whispers. And I invite the curiosity to say, wait a minute, that thought, does it really feel true? That thought, where did it come from? That voice, is that like a borrowed thought? Was that like someone else talking? Because when I open my porthole to divine guidance, it could be very surprising. The message could be quite fresh and new. So I think curiosity just loosens up the distance enough to say, wait a minute, that really harsh, damning voice, is that really my voice, or is it possible? I wonder where that really came from. Whose is it?
Is that a
You know,
bad broken record from childhood?
you can take that to counsel and ask what they have to say about it, right? The
Yeah.
practice we
Oh, yeah,
teach
yeah,
here.
yeah.
There's
Or
divine
maybe
guidance.
counseling. I mean, I've done plenty of counseling therapy. However, I have found EMDR to be wildly effective. Have you ever done any studies on that in the brain or anything, any activity that happens with that modality, or do you know much about it?
There are good studies on EMDR. That doesn't happen to be my personal area of publication.
Hmm.
I think what we can say from the area where I've published is that we are able to use different circuits in our brain and cultivate that choice. And the more we make a choice to use one circuit versus another, the more it is immediately available to us. We looked at people who day in and day out over 8 years chose to connect to the sacred nature of life. They chose to meditate. They chose to pray. They chose to dial in to the deeper nature of life day in and day out over 8 years. And sure enough, at the end of 8 years, they had strengthened, just like a muscle, the regions of their awakened brain. They had a thicker cortex across the regions of the awakened brain. So, in brief, when we choose to engage our spiritual way of knowing, when we choose to open our spiritual perception day in and day out,
Yeah.
it becomes the new normal, the go-to point, and our brain literally thickens and strengthens across the perceptual regions. We have a thicker cortex across the regions of the awakened brain. We have a lot to contribute to our own spiritual life.
Pretty much the only ones responsible. I mean, perception, I believe perception's reality, you know? Again, like, how is this happening for me? You know, what is this? Or the thing that I'm always asking myself, if something undesirable happens, then it's like, what's the lesson? What's the lesson? Obviously, I'm a participant.
So, may I ask you a question? You
Sure,
are
yeah.
such a wonderful, brave warrior. Do you consider yourself a spiritually inspired warrior? Because I think you just give off a strength and a power that is more than a human power.
Oh,
It's an inspired.
thank you. I will, the first thing that what I was saying, a little starting to say, was that I love living in the mystery. So, like, even for someone out there that's listening, that maybe it's like La La Land or something like that. So, is it fun? Is it interesting? Is it exciting, inspiring? Is it magical? Like, so sometimes I just like tell people, I don't know if this is true or not, but I just like living in the mystery. I like philosophizing. I like questioning things. I like being curious, and I like to imagine, because the world that I want to live in is magical. And so I've thought to myself, how is that actually not real then if I want to live there? It's real for me.
I love that you're raising imagination. So, once again, in the 20th century, the word imagination meant to construct, to make up, that somehow we sort of fabricated it. But imagination means to image, to receive. And in the 21st century, where we know the brain is an antenna, that which we image is like a catch in the catcher's mitt. It is a divine message. It is you are receiving sacred consciousness. Your imagined world is an inspired world.
But I've always had a very deep curiosity and skepticism. I think this is my openness, but my curiosity too. It doesn't all just fall into like believing everything, but being curious leads you into these spaces. So I've always been connected to praying or ascended masters, mystical, ancient history. I love Egypt. I love the whole thing about it. I'm obsessed with it. So just that connection to ancient history. I'm not so connected to sort of like World War One, but like, Atlantis, ancient Egypt, Sumeria, Göbekli Tepe, Easter Island, like any of those kinds of places, Machu Picchu. Very fascinated, very curious. And I think all
People
that.
like you are showing up now. Is it possible that that is the caliber of place that we're co-creating right now, or divinity through us is realizing?
Mm, you know what I have heard? I've heard that the Great Pyramid is actually from the future. I thought that was kind of an interesting thought, that it's actually from the future. It's actually informing us of who we are. There's so much geometry and math that would reflect the nature of the universe and our planet and us, that there's been a few that have said that. And I'm like, wow, that's very interesting.
I feel like we're on the cusp of the realization of a profound civilization, an inspired, spiritually guided civilization. I can't imagine a more exciting time to be alive.
I've actually said that ever since lockdown happened. I'm like, what a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. One of them that I'm curious from your perspective, your thoughts about this, but I feel like I've been saying for years and years, and Jen, my producer, can attest to this because she's listened to so many of these, that we're being called into trusting that intuition and gaining these psychic powers back and trusting them, because we can't trust anything else anymore. And the only way we're really going to know what's true is to connect to that. And additionally, that what will evolve and elevate humanity is when men and women are able to fully embody, embrace, and be who they are and what they're the best at, and honor each other. So that essentially, two doesn't become one, it becomes a multiple, because it's becoming more. So like if I have intuition and, a man has the ability to build it, it's like, trust me, I trust you, we make more, right? It's sort of like the next evolution. And so I feel like we're stepping into a time where men are learning to trust women's sort of spiritual side again, and women can honor men for being men. This whole patriarchal thing is I understand some of the background of it, but it's not everything. Like men have a manly role to play, and men and women are not the same.
Deeply honor each other's tremendous gifts and synergy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
so excited for this era upon us.
I think what's super amazing, when I said you're a pioneer, to have the first graduate program for spirituality at Columbia is just amazing. I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit of that curriculum and your passion there, but I think that this is a step in such the right direction. School in and of itself needs a whole new curriculum, but this is one of those super great additions. What is the practice? What is the curriculum like, and what do you teach?
About 15 years ago, I founded the first foundationally spiritual graduate degree. Effectively, our students come from all over the world. They're of all different cultures and traditions and decades. And together we look into a foundationally spiritually grounded psychology. So whether people become healers or teachers or guides or entrepreneurs or innovators, they're working from a deep awakened perspective. And it seemed to me that higher education needs to put at the center our spiritual awareness, and then all else will follow. We will have a values driven, divinely inspired, guided society.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like it's not mystery because you're using science, but what it speaks to for me is like a mystery school, right? The like Isis and Hathor and all the goddesses in Egypt had their mystery schools. So I feel like you're creating a mystery school.
And indeed, at the Spirituality Mind Body Institute, we honor all forms of knowing. We have multiple inborn, if you will, organic ways of knowing. We have intuition and mystical awareness, synchronicity, gut instinct, and logic and empiricism. The skeptics welcome. When we bring into tandem all of our inborn organic ways of knowing, we have a much more dynamic, innovative, and aligned connection with real ideas, truth, innovations that are not zero sum game, but win win, like the bonfire behind you. We're trying to train a whole generation of leaders and healers in a foundationally spiritual approach to the human journey.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're a blessing, and it was a pleasure talking to you. I hope we do it again.
Such a joy.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.